WVOX. From Westchester and now all over the world.
1460 WVOX.
Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm the poorly dressed Peter Moses, and I'm wearing a T-shirt and sweatpants. And the guy sitting across from me is wearing a suit. His press person is well-dressed like a human being. John is dressed like he's ready to, I don't know, go watch a ball game. And Ardina is dressed like she's ready to go to dinner with Hillary Clinton.
But Peter, nothing about the
I don't know if that's
Red
good or
Hawks
bad.
and nothing red. You tend to have been wearing red recently.
You know, I had a very odd weekend. It was my daughter's 26th birthday this weekend, and things went fine. But as always, they go awry in my family. Everything's very, very, very dramatic.
And you live in White Plains, not Rye.
And I'm sleeping, and I had to get through the last 48 hours, and that's that. Anyway, we have with us today a guy with really great hair.
Which you can't see on the radio.
But it's a shame, but I'm sure you could look up Jonathan Lewis. He is running against the politician who I have said on the air is the dumbest elected official I've ever met in my entire life.
Don't hold back. Let us know how you really feel.
And I've met some real dumb people who were in office. I mean, I'm from Portchester. I know a lot of dumb people who've been in office, but I've never met anyone as stupid as Eliot Engel. And the guy who's sitting across from me wearing his rimless glasses. Oh, yes. Wearing rimless glasses, a blue jacket, looking. I know his name is Jonathan Lewis.
I'm just saying he's wearing that too.
He's wearing his name tag and all. He's running against them. Now, are you a Republican or a Democrat?
I'm a lifelong Democrat. Thank you for asking.
Why do some people think you're a Republican?
I have no idea. I've been a Democrat all my life.
You were born a Democrat?
Well, in a certain sense, I was born a Democrat. I was born in Mount Vernon Hospital. I spent my early years in Eastchester. My father was the Eastchester Town Democratic Chairman.
But you're not Italian. How could you be in Eastchester?
Posso parlare italiano. Studiavo a Firenze per 5 mesi. So I do know Italian. I love Italian culture, of course, Italian food.
But can you say yo authoritatively?
I actually could say yo authoritatively. Yo.
Well,
that's almost as good as you.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
So go ahead.
And if you love
Let's hear more of your
I'll do that a little bit more later. I'll give you another yo, but I'll try to do it more like Sylvester Stallone.
Backwards, it's oi.
And backwards, it is oi. Exactly right.
That's true.
That's true. That's absolutely right.
Ardina, that was actually funny. Why are you so overdressed today?
It was very good, Ardina.
I was cold.
Oh my God! Old ladies and getting cold in the summer. Anyway, go ahead, John.
So now you were asking me. I'm no Republican. I'm a Democrat. As I said, my dad was the town Democratic chairman in Eastchester when I was a kid. I'm so proud of him. He was a World War II vet who thought that the noblest thing one could do is to serve your community, and I followed in his footsteps. And back in the 1960s, he challenged the Republican machine in Eastchester, and he ran on an all-environmental platform in 1965. And God bless him, he did that because the point needed to be made.
Did he win?
It was Eastchester in 1965. You know the answer to that question. I think that was a rhetorical question. You knew the outcome.
It was.
Yes. But so again, I was brought up with stories about the New Deal. My father lived through the Great Depression.
John was brought up with the nude deal, but we're not going to get into that today.
But don't bump.
Yes. But so my father was a New Deal kid. I felt it was so important to honor the legacy of FDR. That's why, for me personally, things like, Medicare for all really matter. We need to keep taking those basic values of the New Deal forward. That's why, for me, public education is so important. You can't have a great democracy without great public education. And so that's especially why it's so important to me that my value system is how do we get the debate in Washington shifting away from an excessive amount of intervention overseas, trying to remake the world in our own image, and repairing the world here at home.
Go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say that, you bring up the importance of education. Education clearly is an important issue to be brought up. How do we pay for it?
The right answer is carefully. We can only afford the education we have the funds for.
Mm-hmm.
So if we start at the federal level, if you believe, as I believe, that there's a role for an expanded Department of Education, we need to find a way to move resources from other places to education. My view is defense is the place. We're spending too much money on overseas commitments. McKinsey says there's $100 billion of waste in the defense budget. We need to have Congress people brave enough to stand up to that and to say, let's shift our priorities to education. The money's there.
And that is a brilliant way to finish our first segment.
Brilliant?
A brilliant way, yes, because his timing was right on the mark. He
also seems to have a brain, unlike Eliot Engel.
And he heard the music come on, so he knew that we're getting ready for break.
Eliot Engel doesn't know what music is.
Unfortunately, he does not.
Yeah.
What about Jonathan Lewis today?
And you're listening to Westchester Eye on the radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. I'm John Turan, along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward, and our special in-studio guest, who is not Eliot Engel, is Jonathan Lewis, challenging Eliot Engel for Congress. Stay tuned, and you'll hear more from our prospective candidate for Congress right after
VOX. There's always something happening at 1460 on your radio.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Hello out there in Radio Land. This is Westchester Eye on the radio. Happy Monday, and we have a good show going on today. I am Ardina Seward, and I am with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and our in-studio guest is Jonathan Lewis, who is running against Mr. Eliot Engel, a long-established congressman who may or may not be...
Brain dead.
I was going to choose the word unseated. Peter chose brain dead, vulnerable. Thank you, John. The voice of class, as always. And
what is that supposed to mean?
I'm not even
Take it what you want to, Peter. We know what she said.
When you're doing a radio show, you can elevate the conversation in various modes.
Well, I'm going to elevate
I am
it.
choosing.
But
more
you're the one in
confrontative.
the one in the T-shirt right now, Peter.
We got a half hour left, and I'm not going to get sidetracked. So before we went to break, Jonathan, you had mentioned something in reference to spending for education and to spend less on the defense budget.
Correct.
Which brings me to the issue of your company, which is Fiera Capital. I know you've taken a leave from Fiera Capital.
Yes. Maybe I could comment on that.
But
Yes.
let me make a point, then you can slap me down and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about.
He slaps you, he's going to have to go through me.
But you have, I did a cursory search, and there are some different holdings, many holdings. I mean, it's a sizable company. But one of those holdings is Boeing, I believe. Not holdings is the wrong term. That's why I don't have any money in the stock market. But what I'm saying is that your company investments, apparently your company has some shares in Boeing. So I know that you've taken leave from your company, from Fiera Capital, and forgive my financial naivete.
Yes.
But if you're going to advocate for less defense funding, and more for education. Where
spending and funding, I like it.
I can't talk today. You got me distracted. But here, Boeing is apparently the second largest defense contractor. So that means they're making big bucks. So once elected, how do you weigh those two things? I mean, on one hand, you got to sell Boeing, but on the other hand, you got to take money away from them for education. So you take the floor now.
Actually, that's a wonderful question. So first, let me say I am on leave from my company, which is fascinating how that relates to federal election law. I'd like to get back to that in a second. But to your question about Boeing specifically, what's wonderful about my company is I'm on leave to run for office and speak my mind. And they're okay with that. So I'm speaking my mind about what I think is important. In the meantime, Fiera, like many investment companies, has all kinds of mutual funds and portfolios that they manage for different investors who have different investor needs, different risk profiles, different objectives. Those funds are managed for the investors. And if there are portfolio managers who are managing those portfolios or those mutual funds, their job is to meet those investor expectations. And that's a service to those investors who want those kinds of investments in their portfolio. But one other thing I'd like to mention is what's really fascinating is Fiera is a signatory to something called the UN Principles of Responsible Investing, which is very, very cool because it encourages shareholders and investors around the world to speak to companies, to speak to their investment managers, and to advocate for their values to influence the management of assets as a way to change the world.
But let's be realistic. You get elected to Congress. You have EE's seat, and there comes a time when you may have to vote on cutting defense spending. The next thing you know, you get this phone call from Boeing, and they say, "Jonathan, what are you doing? You're
No, I think the first phone call is going to be from the Washington Post about, because they'll have done your background and go, how do you vote on something when you have a vested interest, even though you're on leave from the company?" So
let's clarify that point. So if elected, I would have to resign my position, so I'd no longer be working for the company. So that's an important point. Also important that if elected, I would put all of my investments in index funds, which have no active viewpoint in it. And I think that's probably a responsible thing for all elected officials to do, right? There's, an index fund that represents the entire economy, the entire market. I think that would be a very responsible way to invest one's retirement savings, such that there would be no active view about which company to own or not own. You're owning the American economy.
But help me to understand this, and I hate to belabor the point.
No, of course.
I mean, you also have your company also has investments in Pfizer. It has investments in a company called Advantage Gas and Oil. Gas and oil, of course, there are environmental issues, and Pfizer on the healthcare issue. So, is there I think what I'm trying to say is, how do you split allegiance or dissolve allegiance to one sector and devote allegiance to another?
Very great question. Again, elected to Congress, I would resign my position. I wouldn't be working for any firm. I'd be a member of Congress. I would have no conflict. Whereas today, here's an interesting statistic, because earlier we were chatting casually about statistics and interesting facts. Right now, there are approximately 6-7 members of Congress who belong to something called the Anti-PAC Caucus. The Anti-PAC Caucus represents those members of Congress who have said, I won't take any PAC money. If elected, I would join the Anti-PAC Caucus, because I'm saying that special interest money creates conflicts.
Are there any Republicans in the Anti-PAC conference?
It's a good question. I'd have to double check the members, but my guess is no. But to this point, my commitment to our neighbors is, if elected, A, I would be required to resign my position, and B, I would invest all of my savings in index funds that are agnostic to the decision of having a lot or having a little in any particular security. It's the market. And I think that's actually what all members of Congress should do, and we don't have a rule like that. Most members of So what I've just done is set a standard that's much higher than what is currently practiced in Congress. The vast majority of the members of Congress take money from PACs. The vast number of the majority of the members of Congress are invested in a whole range of investments, actively managed funds that are making the kinds of decisions that you've just said. I'm saying I wouldn't do either of those things if elected. I would like to speak one moment about the Federal Election Commission law, how it relates to my being on leave, because I think this is really interesting. In our conversation about primaries and my challenging Congressperson Engel, a number of people have said, well, gosh, you're the first person to challenge him in many, many years. Well, I think I understand why, as I've learned about running for office. Federal Election Commission says that if you work for a company, which is the vast majority of people, that you have to go on a leave of absence to run for federal office. Otherwise, your salary would be a corporate contribution to your campaign. It forces all people to either resign their jobs or to go on leave, and it's a special company that lets you go on leave to do this. So I'd like to get back to that in a moment.
Okay, yeah, and I think this is important to continue
Yes.
to talk about it on the other side of the break, just to clarify some issues and bring up some new ones.
Yes.
Okay, you're listening to Westchester Eye on the radio, folks.
What station are we on?
WVOX 1460. You can call 914-636-0110.
And who's our guest?
914-636-0110.
Who's our
We have
guest?
Jonathan Lewis, who's running for congressperson.
With world and national news. VOX, America's great community station.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
We are back into our second half hour. This is Westchester Eye on the Radio. 1460 WVOX coming to you live from the studios in New Rochelle. I am Ardina Seward. I am with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and our guest today is Jonathan Lewis. And we didn't mention Jonathan's communications person, Jonathan Randy, who shall not go unrecognized.
Who's a former Ganatoid.
But who shall be unheard?
But
he's a former Ganatoid, as are John and I.
As John
It's
is
the Gannett Alumni Association.
So we were talking in our first half hour, many things, but we were talking a lot the last few minutes about being able to separate your job from your political quest. And we had spoken about how you divide allegiance between the clients that you serve in your previous life and the clients that you will serve in your next life. So I just want to, before we go on to the next point, I just want to ask one more naive question about allegiances, because again, what I'm trying to understand is that if you work with, let's say, the head of PepsiCo, the head of Pfizer, in terms of your stock portfolio for many, many years, you develop a rather personal relationship, and now you're on the other side of the coin where you may have to legislate against them. Does that imply any kind of backlash? Are you worried about any kind of backlash on your part?
Absolutely not. At the end of the day, my job is to serve as a congressperson the people and to be their voice, and that's the job. And that's why I'm for campaign finance reform. That's why I won't take any PAC money. That's why I believe we need federal financing of our elections. You know, at the end of the day, I'm speaking to voters every day around this district. I'm at train stops all across the district, and I'm asking people what's on their mind and what do they care about. And what they care about is education, fixing up the broken infrastructure, and they're worried about if their voice is being heard. And so it's my passion to make our democracy work better, and my passion to represent the people of this district for this district, not for foreign affairs and not for PACs. For example, right now, Congressman Engel, he takes money from a long list of PACs. I hope you get him on the show, and I hope you ask him this.
They never answer phones, and they never respond to emails. So that's forget it.
Well, here's the question I would want to ask him. So he serves on the Diabetes Caucus, which is supposed to represent people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes.
And you have 2 children that are diabetic.
And I have 2 diabetic children. He takes money from a long list of sugar packs. He takes money from a long list of
sugar packs. That's an interesting phrase.
It's a little bit incongruous, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And he takes money from a long list of pharmaceutical companies for his reelection campaign, the likes of Eli Lilly or Pfizer or Novo Novartis. And the price of life-saving insulin's up 300%. And he serves on that caucus and says nothing.
But what bulletproofs you from that kind of money?
Simply put, I won't take any PAC money. I will only take individual investors, individual voters and their donations. And I'm campaigning for a ban on all PAC money.
Okay, so let's that being said, the concept, the structure that you want to put in place is all well and good, but you have to get elected first. He's been an elected congressperson for how many terms? probably had at least 10
about
terms.
15. About 15.
So 15 terms. So that's 30 years.
Yep. It's a long time.
Now,
it's time for a change.
I understand that, and you represent change. But how are you going to energize the voters? I mean, he is a non-energetic candidate. I mean,
yes.
all bravado aside from me, because I just don't like the guy.
Yes.
But unseating a sitting congressperson in our district, because this is my district too, is not easy.
No, it's very difficult.
And what do you have? What smoking gun do you have about him that's going to turn off voters who are comfortable voting for the same guy for 30 years and vote for someone they've never heard of before in an election that's less than 3 months away? Because it's September, right?
No, actually, it's June 26th.
Oh,
it's a primary.
Tempus fugit, baby. Tempus fugit.
He's going for the Democratic nomination.
Yeah, the state primary is in September.
I thought that was in the primaries are in September. Anyway, even more so. It's 3 weeks away. I'm sorry, I'm uninformed about this, but and I'm interested in these things. So, how are you gaining so much traction that you're going to be able to unseat this guy in 3 weeks?
Simply put, I'm talking with voters about his track record, and his track.
So is he.
Absolutely, but his track record, when voters look at it, I think is really quite disappointing. In 30 years,
but is it dismal?
Well, let me finish. In 30 years, he's passed 13 bills that he's actually sponsored. That's a lot of years.
And yet he's still been elected.
He's still been elected
14 more times after the first one.
All right, so let's get back to the issue of campaign finance reform. He's been elected because no one challenges him.
That's
Look
right.
at how many times he's been challenged in the past 30 years.
That's right.
He doesn't get challenged because actually the democratic process in our country's breaking. We practice in this nation now a new kind of democracy.
Incumbent politics.
It's the power of the incumbency. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party actually practice the same thing. It's called a form of mob economics, where both parties sprinkle around walking around money to the boutiques that make primary contention possible. Many of these boutiques essentially will raise the question to you if you're a insurgent and say, if I work with you, insurgent, I'm going to get in trouble with the big party. That's the reality of our politics here.
Okay, but how much news traction have you gotten?
I'm on your show.
I know you were on our show.
More than Eliot Engel.
But if I can get back to his record, though, because you asked me about his record.
By the way, I'm going to vote for Jonathan Lewis. I'm not.
But let me get back to his record.
But I'm trying to figure out.
Voters ask me, why should I vote for you and not him? I show up to work every day. He's missed over 1,300 votes. It's because he doesn't know the directions how to get to the Congress. But you got to give him credit. You asked me a question. I'd like to finish it. So he's missed over 1,300 votes. Now, you might say, well, that's over 30 years, so maybe that's not the right thing. What's his percent miss record? It's 7.5%, which is triple the typical member of Congress who misses 2.5% of the votes.
Okay, I understand that.
So, furthermore, this is a safe seat. Can we just talk about the fact that if you're elected congressperson from this seat, you should be one of the most powerful progressive voices for social change in the United States of America?
Well,
it's a gold bar,
and
was. He is not.
Dick Ottinger was. He was a good congressperson.
A long time ago.
Yes.
But I'm talking about Eliot Engel. At the end of the day, what passionate speech did he ever give that you remember? What passionate role did he play in any movement that was important?
None, but that's not my question.
That's my answer. My answer is that's what I will do. I'll be a voice.
But your name recognition right now is fairly small, and we're 3 weeks out.
Actually, my name recognition, I believe, is rising sharply. And it's rising sharply because I'm at train stations across this county every day.
And the Bronx.
And the Bronx. Actually, I met hundreds and hundreds of voters in Co-op City on Saturday. Co-op City had an amazing festival. I was there for 5 hours. And can I tell you something? All of those voters said they want to change. All those voters say that Eliot Engel hasn't been there in a long time, though he showed up that day briefly. All of those voters say that he's been phoning it in. Voters who speak to me say, hey, you know what? I may not agree with everything that you say, but I believe you when you say you're passionate and you're going to fight for us. They believe me when I say I'm going to fight for their children's education, their children's future, fixing up our infrastructure, shifting resources from defense to our home because our home is in trouble. Eliot Engel serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee. And you know what? That helps the people of this district 0.0%.
How many debates how many debates have been scheduled between the two of you?
A number of challenges have been made. He has accepted the League of Women Voters invitation. It was initially extended to him for June 5th. He said June 5th didn't work for him, and now it's scheduled for June 24th, 2 days before the primary.
Which is common for incumbents.
Now, if people want to find out more, the Internet provides a lot of information. Where can they find out more about Jonathan Lewis?
www.jonathanlewisforcongress.com. And I have a lot of rich information there about my policy positions on education, because I believe we need equal access to an excellent education for our children to thrive and for our economy to be successful.
We have a caller named Michael. Michael, what is your question for the prospective congressperson?
I've taken the time since you've been on the line to look some of your policies up online here, and I see that you talk about how the incumbent is taking money from drug packs and from Big Pharma, which is helping jack up prices.
Okay, that's a comment. Now, I'm asking you for a question.
I got a question. My question is this. I have a family where I'm at that age now where I'm taking care of my seniors and I'm taking care of my kids all at the same time. I understand how the current thing is keeping drug prices high. How are you going to help bring prescription drugs down? How are we going to lower it? I don't see.
Okay, we're going to have to cut you off because it's a good question. We are about to go to break, so when we come back, Mr. Lewis, can you please answer the question? Michael, thank you very much for the call. We're going to go to our last commercial break before the end of the show. We're going to be back with Jonathan Lewis, and we've been having a very spirited conversation with me interrupting oftentimes because, guys running for office want to talk and talk and talk, and sometimes you got to stop. This is Westchester Eye on the radio on WVOX and WVOX.com. We'll be right back after this commercial break. So please come back afterwards.
Westchester Eye on the radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to the final quarter hour of Westchester Eye on the radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. I'm John Sharan, along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward, and our special in-studio guest, Jonathan Lewis, a challenger to Eliot Engel to be a representative in the Congress of the United States. And our caller, right before break, asked a very interesting question. He asked, about what the situation is involving trying to keep controls under medical costs, especially Big Pharma. What do you plan to do, or what would your plans to be to try to tackle that issue?
Well, there's several things that we need to do. One is we need to allow our neighbors all around the district and around the country to be able to buy cheaper drugs from Canada. It's there. We can eat fruit from Canada. We can drink beer from Canada, and they make a lot of good beer in Canada, by the way.
And oil.
But why can't we just import prescription drugs? It's a crime that we can't. And so that's an important cause to fight for. But that's one part of the solution. A much larger part of the solution, though, is going to the heart of the problem, which is why do we as a nation allow these companies to do these things? When you give a company a patent, you're giving them an important right. And when someone has a right, they also have a responsibility. So if you give them the right to have a patent, they have a responsibility not to abuse it. And so when people abuse their privileges, you should be able to take action. There was a time in America where we had antitrust activity. We broke up big companies. We said, you can't control the market in that way. It's unfair. We've stopped doing that. Republicans and Democrats have been complicit in a wave of deregulation that has shifted the power to the big companies to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's happened with drugs, too. So we need to actually have a more aggressive enforcement of antitrust practices across all industries. And we have to have aggressive regulation that says if you're a drug company and you raise prices too much, we're going to punish you. And you're going to have to repay to the consumer those monies. But most importantly, we also need to get back to investing in discovering drugs that find cures, not drugs that sustain the disease. We want to find the cure. And that means investing more in science.
Research.
And we as a nation have been defunding science at the federal level. And so when I speak of finding savings elsewhere in the federal budget to do important things for us at home, funding science and education are at the heart of what I want to do. And I was asked earlier, why should people vote for me instead of Eliot Engel? Where is he in this fight? He's silent on this fight. His focus is on foreign affairs. The people of this district need somebody who's going to use the safe seat to be a progressive voice and to speak out to power, whether it be pharma companies or any company.
Speaking of, I'm sorry, John.
I was just going to say, and staying on that topic, how can we make Medicare be more defensive against billing practices by pharmaceutical companies to make sure that prices are reasonable, that we get charged at a lower rate, a rate that's comparable to what the rest of the world gets charged?
Absolutely correct. At this stage, we pay the most in healthcare of any nation on the world, and we're not the healthiest. So we need to empower and rethink how Medicare operates to precisely achieve that. I believe in healthcare for all. I believe in a single-payer system. I believe healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And I want to fight for those things. And I think it's hard for Congressman Engel to do that because he's a creature of Washington. He's part of the system. You know, you need to be willing to take chances to have change happen. I'm taking a chance. I'm standing up right now to change things. And I'm standing up right now for that change because the time needs it.
And speaking of changing things, I have to give a shout out to Indivisible Westchester, which you're probably aware is a very active and effective group in Westchester County.
I would call them at this point a change agent.
They're change agents for sure. And when I had posted that you were going to be on the show, got some interesting comments out of the group, and there's so many. I'm going to read one, which is rather outstanding. I won't mention the person's name, but this woman says, "This is really looking like Jonathan Lewis is just a longtime Republican who, like Richard Painter, just wants to be part of a less overtly racist and less overtly corrupt party." About Eliot Engel, the worst complaint they had was that he was apparently rude to staff and that if Nita Lowy was still our rep, Lewis wouldn't be running. I just doubt that. I brought up that if Lewis were elected to the seat, all he'd have to do is just stay a Democrat to keep the seat a long time. He would start voting against our gun control, even reproductive freedoms, and still keep the seat. I know Engel won't do that. Then again, I think of Luba Gretchen Surley and the uphill battle she's running, yada, 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 yada. Okay, so.
How would you respond?
Well, first let me say, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and there's no evidence to the contrary. With regards to reproductive rights, I met my wife when she was working with NOW, and our first dates were in the late 1980s and early 1990s when I used to work with her doing clinic defenses. So you may recall there was a gentleman named Randall Terry who headed a horrible organization called Operation Rescue that used to harass women when they were going to abortion clinics. And nothing could be more inhumane than what Operation Rescue was doing. So my wife and I, we would escort women into those clinics so that they were not being harassed. My daughter just finished up an internship this winter at Planned Parenthood. I have a very, very, very strong commitment to reproductive rights, to abortion rights. It's a woman's right to choose. And I would say what I like about those comments is it's good to be challenged. I want to be challenged so I can take on the issues. People are saying things that aren't true, and I'm grateful for you to give me the chance to speak to it. Because for someone to say that I'm a Republican couldn't be a greater falsehood. And I'm not in all the chat rooms where they are. But I would just say, please examine my record. And on reproductive freedom, please go to my website. But again, speak to my wife. I was out at those clinics. I was in those battlegrounds, and I'm no Republican.
And you mentioned your website, and could you remind everybody what that is?
www.jonathanlewisforcongress.com.
So there you go. Poster in IW. Got your answer.
I just don't understand something. I know I said during the break I wasn't going to say anything else, but when you read this crackpot commentary by a woman named Jacqueline McCann, I'm just curious. I'm looking at responses to what she said, or comments made after this rant went up there. And I'm wondering where she got this information. Was there a space rock that came out and hit her on the head or something? I mean, if there is no history of this man being a Republican, the fact that he has good hair and wears rimless glasses, is that the reason why you think he's a Republican? I mean,
fake news.
I just don't understand where these people come from. This woman is she a part of Indivisible? You don't know anything about her. And yet, but you read this like it has some gravitas, and it sounds like some insane person ranting about something someone she knows absolutely nothing about.
And I'd like to address the guns issue because it's on my website. I just wish that if people are concerned about a position, please take the extra moment to see what my positions actually are. So I have a proposal that I would propose upon election to Congress that relates to my national plan for school safety and guns. There's a big debate now about guns that's coming out of the national crisis we have in school safety. At the end of the day, the NRA is fighting us tooth and nail. I want the toughest gun control laws in the nation. The NRA can fight us because of the PAC money they get. That's why I want to stop the PAC money. The PAC money funds a lot of things that just aren't right.
We're running short of time, so focus on what you're actually going to do with the gun issue.
So, well, one, I'll note that I've been given the Candidate of Distinction commendation by Moms Demand Action. They've read my plan, so I'm very grateful to Moms Demand Action for recognizing my positions on this. I call for a national commission to set a national standard for safety for urban, suburban, and rural schools. We do a gap analysis to see which schools can pay for it and which can't. And then we ask Homeland Security to make sure that every child has an equal standard of safety, and we fund it. Because you know what? Just as it's wrong for a child's zip code to determine the quality of their education, it couldn't be more morally reprehensible for a child's zip code to determine if they're safe or not in school. And that's what I stand for.
On a totally separate note, I do find it interesting, though, that the people who are running for office from the Democratic side are white Jewish guys in a district that has turned very much Hispanic. And are there Hispanics as part of your campaign?
My sister-in-law is from El Salvador, and my nephew Jason and Jeremy are Hispanic, and I'm proud of that heritage in my family.
Okay. So, Ardina, who do we have on next week?
Next week, we have a representative of Lime Bike. And Lime Bike, if you've been following, has a lot of detractors as well as riders.
And some of them being thrown into the Hudson River. Anyway, we're going to have Ardina's guest on next week. By the way, I have to publicly say... Yes,
we should also remind everybody, remember, this election is June 26th.
June 26th, not September like I thought it was. All right, so you guys have a great week. I hope the Mets win at least 1 or 2 games in the next month. This is Westchester Eye on the radio on WVOX, WVOX.com, and hope the weather holds up and we have some baseball this week. Winning baseball. Take care now, everybody. Bye now.